Good morning to everyone. You know why I'm happy to be here? Because Wired supported my project before it was successful. Today I have a lot of invitations, a lot of articles, but in 2009 the plane had never flown. And you made already great articles to support it. That's fantastic. Thank you. But you are probably not here to learn how to fly a solar-powered airplane. But we have another thing in common. We all have dreams. We all have projects. We all have hope and visions. And probably we all make the same experience. Each time we speak about it to somebody in advance, not to Wired, but to most of the people, they say, it's impossible, it won't work. And you say, why is it impossible? And the answer is, because nobody has done it before. That's the most stupid answer you can ever get. Because nobody has done it before, it's impossible. Well, it's the opposite. You have to try and then see if it's possible, and usually it is. So when I made the first flight around the world in a balloon nonstop with my friend Brian Jones, people told me it was impossible. Well, actually, it was almost impossible. Because actually, when we took off, we had 3.7 tons of liquid propane. And we had to use this propane to heat the envelope day and night. And after 45,000 kilometers, when we landed with Brian, we had 40 kilos left. So when you think about dependency to fossil energy, in our society, it's a little bit a concept. Nobody knows, but everybody speaks. If you're in a balloon, it's not a concept. It's a feeling in your gut. You know that you're going to fall from the sky if you have not enough fuel. And this is when I started to dream of a solar-powered airplane that could fly forever. To take off and stay in the air as long as you want with no fuel gauge. People didn't think it was possible, except maybe an artist in the beginning who made an artistic view of the plane. Nevertheless, 15 years later, together with Audrey Borschberg, we took off from Abu Dhabi. Only one seat, as you saw in the first video, so we had to take turns in the cockpit. The aim was to fly around the world, to make the first solar flight around the world without fuel, just on solar power. And if you want to do that, you need to go through the night. And the night is the most frightful thing you can get in a solar airplane, of course. You need, during the entire day, to climb, load the batteries while you're flying in order to go through the night and reach the next sunrise before the batteries are empty, and mainly before you get into the water. And it worked. It worked, and we could cross oceans. We could cross continents. Each time we landed, it was just to change the pilot. Some of the flights were 5 days, 5 nights, 3 days, 3 nights. And what was the most fantastic, maybe, is the symbol of crossing the Atlantic. The Atlantic, since Christopher Columbus, was always the separation between the old world and the new world. But today, old world and new world are not geographic continents anymore. They are state of mind. So when you fly in a solar airplane, you leave the state of mind of pollution, depletion of natural resources, and climate change with fossil energy. And you fly into the new world, the state of mind of renewable energy, clean technologies, respect for the environment, sustainable development, fighting against climate change. So the worst moment, of course, is when you land. Because when you land, after having been in the future, having been in science fiction, flying like in a fairy tale, you land back in the past. You have the impression the world can be so much different, and when you land, it is not. It is still the same. It is still people who tell you, oh, we need to stick to old energy sources. No, we cannot go with solar. Solar doesn't work at night, and you just did several nights on solar power. We flew across iconic places, of course. The Golden Gate, who has welcomed millions of immigrants trying to find the land of freedom. Well, freedom is to get rid of fossil energy. Flying over the Statue of Liberty, that was Audrey's flight. 6 months of discussion with the administration before he could fly in the Hudson Bay. Flying over the pyramids of Egypt. Egypt was the first country 4,800 years ago that was monotheist, single God. And it was the sun. Well, for us, it was our single source of energy before we could come back to Abu Dhabi successfully. Some newspaper wrote that we achieved the impossible. It's wrong, because the impossible, by definition, is impossible. What we achieved is what people thought that it was impossible, and they thought about it because they were wrong. You know, people have limits in their minds. Technology is not the limit. Mindset is the limit. And in our team, there was no limit. And why that? You know, when you see the picture of the success, of course there is the plane, of course there is the pilot, of course you have the team. That's even more important than the pilot. But you have this banner in the front, 40,000 kilometers without fuel, a first for energy. Take it further. Take it further is the message. Because today, for the first time, we have a possible reconciliation between ecology and economy. For years, you had people wanting to protect the environment, but threatening growth, mobility, and comfort, which doesn't work. And you had the industry providing growth, economy, comfort, and salaries, but destroying the environment, which also doesn't work. Today, you can do both at the same time with clean technologies. It is today profitable to save energy, to save natural resources. You make new products, you create jobs, and you make a clean GDP. This is what we wanted to demonstrate with Solar Impulse, and this is what our team understood. Solar Impulse was standing for renewable energy, showing that we could do incredible goals, incredible things, like flying around the world with no fuel, thanks to the technologies that we have today. Science fiction starts today. It's not in the future. It's now. And this is the good news. The team knew that they were working for that. And it's really important to have a purpose, to have a meaning. The goal was not to make a world record. The goal was to have a tool to change the world. And I knew it would work 8 years ago when I was walking in the street in Zurich, and a young lady started to scream at me and say, "I recognize you. You are from Solar Impulse. Because of you, I lost my boyfriend." I said, what are you saying? I said, "Yeah, my boyfriend, he was, or my ex-boyfriend, he is engineer at Solar Impulse, and he works all the time. I cannot see him anymore, so we split." I said, "But did you tell him that you wanted to see him more?" And she told me, "Of course I told him." And you know what he answered? He answered, "If you want to change the world, you have to make some sacrifice." Can you imagine an engineer in a project like this who knows that he's not only gluing pieces of carbon or designing a piece or welding 2 electric wires? No, an engineer knowing that he's participating, contributing to change the world. This is fantastic. And everybody in the team was like that. And the people who supported us also. The introduction to my speech today is linked to the Paris Agreement about climate change. So people really now understand that you can have iconic symbols that can change the mindset of the people. But before you get there are a few rules to follow. One of the rules is that when you have a vision, the first step to do is to find one person who will support you, or one institution. Otherwise, you really feel lonely, and the future is depressing. In my case, it was the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, the EPFL, who launched a feasibility study led by André Borschberg. That's how I met André. And after 9 months, we had a rough idea of what we had to do, but we had no technology, we had no team, and we had no money. And here comes the second rule. If you want to achieve something a little bit impossible, announce it publicly very quickly. I said to everybody, we make a press conference now. And they said, "Don't you think it's too early? We have nothing." I said, "It's exactly because we have nothing that we have to announce it." Because when you are working on something difficult and nobody knows that you are doing it, it's very tempting to give up. If everybody knows about it, you cannot give up anymore. You burn the bridges behind you, you can only move forward, and you are condemned to succeed. It's what we did. And the second rule is to work with people who are completely different. If you work with similar people, you learn nothing. You have no creativity, no innovation. You need to find partners who are the opposite of yourself. André is the missing part of me. I'm the missing part of him. He's a jet fighter pilot, I'm a balloonist. He's an entrepreneur creating startup, I'm an explorer. He's an engineer by training, I'm a medical doctor and psychiatrist. We cannot be more different. And this is how we can learn something new. With similar people, it's maybe fun. You have friendship, you have no conflict, but you learn nothing. It's 1 and 1 equal 1. With somebody different, it can be 1 and 1 equal 3. Audrey's experience, my experience, and when we put both of them together, we have the third experience. The one who will allow us to call our certitudes into question, to change what we have learned, to change our vision of the world, to have a new vision of the world that helps us to move forward. This is how, after about 3 years, we had a plastic model of the plane that we had to build. 72-meter wingspan, 236 feet, bigger than the Boeing 747. But the weight had to be lighter than a family car. So with this huge wingspan we had to build, so light, everybody was laughing at us, exactly like Dumbo with the big ears. You remember Dumbo? The ears were so big, everybody made fun of him, until he could use his problem to fly. And he was the first flying elephant, becoming the hero of the circus. Well, thanks to our big wingspan, we had actually enough surface for the solar cells, enough aspect ratio to be extremely energy efficient. So the plane was using so little amount of energy that the sun and the batteries were enough to make it fly day and night. But it's true that there were reasons not to believe it could be done, because the structure in carbon fiber had to be 10 times lighter, proportionally, to the best glider in the world. Not 10% lighter, 10 times lighter, a completely disruptive progress. So the world of aviation said it could not be done. They had no idea how to do it. So we needed to find somebody who did not know it was impossible, and we found a shipyard. The shipyard who built the hulls of the Alinghi boats who won the America's Cup twice for Switzerland. So if you have a country who has no sea, who wins the America's Cup twice, it means the constructor of the boat must really be good. And he was asked to build the carbon fiber pieces for the plane. But our team said, these guys are useless. They know how to use carbon fiber, but they don't know how to make a plane. Their guys said, we know how to use carbon fiber, but the one who are making the plane, they don't know how to use it, so we cannot work with them. And here again, it was 1 and 1 equal 3, until the guys who were making the plane learned how to use carbon fiber, to use sheets of carbon, pre-peg, including the epoxy glue, that was 3 times lighter than any sheet of paper coming from the printer. Yes, the world is changing. You have now all the possibilities in the world with clean technologies to be lighter, to be more energy efficient. When we speak about all the goals for climate change, it's quite easy to reach them if you see all the solutions available. Today, you can divide by 2 the CO2 emissions of the world with this type of technologies. Once we had the way to build the plane, we had to fund it. And here again, I thought that the world of aviation maybe could help us, at least to fund the project, if not building the plane. But it was the opposite. I think they would pay me not to put their name on the plane because they were so afraid we would crash with their logo. Who was a partner? Chemical industry, elevators, watches, champagne, Google, insurances, Swisscom, companies who had nothing to do with aviation. And in the beginning, I was disappointed until I remembered that it was not the people selling candles who invented the light bulb. It's completely other people. Even the best electric car does not come from the car industry. It comes from a billionaire of the world of internet who had no idea how to make a car, and he took a computer screen and built the Tesla around it, inventing a completely new concept of car, because he was free enough to think in every direction. In the history of my family, actually it was the same. In 1931, my grandfather invented the principle of the pressurized capsule, and he wanted to test it in the stratosphere, but nobody wanted to make it. Who accepted to do it? A beer cask manufacturer who made a beer cask in aluminum, and my grandfather took it to the stratosphere. When my father made the deepest dive ever in the Mariana Trench, 11,000 meters down, in 1960, he was not a submarine constructor. No, he had studied political economy in Geneva. And he worked with my grandfather to build that submarine and took it 11 kilometers down when the specialists of submarines were diving in those days 300 meters down. So you see, if you want innovation, you have to get out of the system. You have to get out of what you have learned, because what you have learned is a handicap. Normally, in our world, we work like that. We're afraid of the unknown. We're afraid of the doubts and the question marks, which means that we don't want to look left and right. We want to fight straight ahead to reach the goal we have set, and we have no idea if it's going to work. Usually it doesn't, because very often we have an obstacle like here, and we call it a crisis, a disaster, a catastrophe, and we crash, blaming life for being so rude with us, instead of blaming ourselves not to be ready for life. So it's clear that if we want to succeed in the projects we have, if we want to achieve something that people believe is impossible, we need to be able to think in every direction. We need to be able to envisage absolutely every possibility. And this is why ballooning is a nice metaphor for innovation and creativity. In a balloon, you are pushed by the wind in the direction of the wind at the speed of the wind toward the unknown. You can cry, shout, pray, or swear. It will change nothing. Nothing. The only way to change your direction is to change your altitude, because you will learn that the atmosphere is made out of several different layers of wind, which all have a different direction and a different speed. So if you want to go left or right, you have to move up or down. And in life, it's exactly the same. In life, we have visions, hope, projects, but if we want to reach them, we have to realize that we are prisoner of the winds of life, prisoner of all the things we cannot control in our everyday life. And we have to change altitude to find other influences, other visions of the world, other solutions and strategies, other mindsets that will necessarily reorient our trajectory in a better way. But for this, you have to do like in a balloon. You have to drop ballast. To get up, the balloon has to drop weight. And we need to drop our ballast. That means our certitudes, our habits, our convictions, our beliefs, our paradigms, our dogmas. We need to throw overboard everything that prevents us to have the complete freedom of thinking in every direction. This is what we normally don't learn. We learn knowledge. We don't learn question marks and doubts. We don't learn what people cannot explain. We teach children only to focus on what science has proven. We need to change that. We need to teach our children all the things that have not yet been explored and understood. And we have to teach ourselves to do exactly the same. What is still to be discovered? What is still to be understood? This is the interest for the explorer and for the adventurer, for the pioneer, for the entrepreneur, for the innovator, even for the artist. It means that at every moment of our life, we need to be able to honestly observe what we deeply believe, the road on which we are usually, and envisage the opposite. The opposite is not always better, but between the two opposites, between the two extremes, you have thousands of possible solutions, thousands of options, thousands of opportunities. And if you manage to do this, life is like a firework in 3 dimensions. For every altitude, that means from every way of thinking and behaving, you have one direction, going somewhere in life. You don't know in advance where it goes. You just need to know that it exists and that maybe you can try. Which means, of course, that we will not always be successful. The pioneer is not the one who is always successful. The pioneer is the one who is never afraid of trying and maybe failing. But can you imagine if we have the freedom to think every possibility out of our beliefs? Because if you take your real convictions today, for who do we have to vote? Do we have to support Israel or Palestine? Do we have to make drugs legal or not? All these social, moral, political convictions of our world. Imagine that you can get rid of them and envisage the future completely open with every way to think and to behave. Then you are an explorer. Then you are free. And then you can deal with the unknown in a completely different way. This is a picture I like very much because I think it's a symbol of life. It's the last picture I did with Brian during the flight around the world in the balloon. It's the window of the capsule of Breitling Orbiter 3. It's frozen by the night, frozen by all the moisture we had in the capsule, putting big ice crystals on the glass. And on the other side, we have a rising sun. But you will never see the rising sun if you don't manage to go through the ice first. And this is something so many people are afraid to do in life. We have ice like this. We have crises. We have problems. We have these moments of rupture where we have the impression to lose control on everything. It's not easy, but it's always interesting. Those are the moments where we can finally be the actors of our future and not the hostage of our past anymore. These are the moments that a lot of people want to avoid. And it's true that you have a lot of people who prefer to suffer in the ice they know rather than to take the risk of going through the ice to see what there is on the other side. But when we take that risk, we understand the difference between a crisis and an adventure. The adventure is the crisis that we accept. The crisis is the adventure that we refuse. We can accept the crisis and it becomes an adventure. We can refuse the adventure and it will stay a crisis. This is our decision. Each time we face a problem, we can ask, is life going to destroy us? Or is life going to challenge me to find new ways of thinking, change altitude, drop ballast, and be an innovator, and be an explorer? When I was in the middle of the Atlantic, in the middle of the night, low level in solar impulse, waiting for the sunrise to get the energy to continue, I was wondering why I was feeling so much better than in any other moment of my life. And I think it's only because I was out of my comfort zone. I was out of everything that was preventing me to be myself. And suddenly there in the middle of the night, in the middle of the ocean, I could have this confidence that human beings can achieve far more than what we usually believe. And this is what everybody has to understand. And today, we have a lot of challenges to reach in our world. And we hear again people who say it's impossible. Impossible to fight poverty. Impossible to promote human rights. impossible to have a good governance on this planet. Yeah, maybe this is still maybe a little bit impossible. Impossible to fight climate change. It's completely wrong. It's not impossible at all. It's exactly like the ice on that picture. We need to use the human resources, the human potential of creativity and imagination in order to implement all the solutions we have today. We have these solutions, but they're out of our habits. They're out of what we have learned. They're out of what we believe. And this is why the future of our world today, to solve the problems for quality of life of humankind, is a fantastic adventure. So you can fly around the world in a solar airplane. You can be a journalist. You can be a politician. You can be an artist. You can be everything. But if you don't try to improve the quality of life on this planet, it will always remain useless. This is maybe what brings us all together, going from a hope to a target to a reality. And we can make this reality happen if we all understand that we can be pioneers, explorers, and adventurers. Good luck to all.